Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stratagoy video. We're back, not with another faction focus review this time. It's weird to not say it after so many faction focuses. But Ryan and I just could not get enough of the daily vids, so we're making one more. And Ryan has plans for another, and I'm also thinking about a tech list video potentially, like a prediction video maybe. But we're here with the tier lists, and I just want to preface this by saying that we're not going to rate the strength of the armies in 4th edition because we can't do that. We don't have enough information to do so. What we are going to do, though, is going to compare the faction focuses. So we have a tier list here that's separating the faction focuses into 5 tiers. You've got the top tier where the faction focus both displayed good traits for the army and good scrolls. Then we figured that good traits is a little bit more important than just good scrolls, so we put that before good scrolls. Then you've got like meh, like it might still get good, but it seemed super weird and we don't know enough, possibly. And then we've got the Slannesh tier here. We put that at the bottom for the ones that saw our faction focus because we can't figure out how this army would ever work. So, Ryan, do you want to add anything before we start organizing these?
I think like something that I noticed as we went through all of the videos, all the faction focuses, was that my opinion of what a good faction focus looked like changed quite significantly from the first week to the last.
Yes.
And it gave me more of a sense of, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have been so hard on this, or maybe, I should have been, less nice to this one. Who knows? So I think this gives us a chance to kind of go back, rewrite history a bit. And then, it'd be fun to kind of do this tier list after we've seen all the rules, but I expect that's going to take a while to see how the game plays and everything. So you've got Beasts of Chaos in here. I see the symbol for beasts. Is that the... Are we gonna just we'll
this
just
is
ignore
a tier list from another person, so I guess they made it for 3rd edition maybe. So we'll probably not be organizing beasts so far because we haven't seen anything about them. But there's not Kruelboysz in there, so we'll see. We also didn't have the separate symbol for the Kruelboysz themselves. Oh, I said bone. I said there's also no Kruelboysz, but I meant bone splitters. But we also didn't have the symbol for Kruelboysz, so we added the picture here, just so you guys know. Anyway, Ryan, I completely agree. I made a lot of notes for this video. I figured I'd also come prepared this time around. And I have to agree with you. A lot of my opinions on the earliest faction focuses have mellowed a little bit after seeing Ogors, Slannesh, and then Sylvaneth. So, and that's not saying that they're all Slannesh tier for me. It's just that those are the ones that I distinctly remember as feel bad for me personally. But I'm happy to hear your opinion on it. And I also wasn't present for all of these. So now's my chance to give some input on the Sons of Bahamut and the Kruelboysz.
And Nurgle.
And Nurgle.
And OBR.
Okay. Guys. So how are we going to do this? We're going to talk about the faction focuses in chronological order, so in the order that they came out. And we'll always go to the article first. We might actually scroll through it a little bit, and then we'll move back to the tier list and drag the according symbol to its rightful place. So Ryan, we're starting off with the Golden Boys, the Stormcast Eternals. I think our initial impression of these guys was that it was a little bit boring and plain, but it was also the first battle traits table that we've seen. How are you feeling about them now?
I think my story has stayed consistent on this one. It's just that I think of Stormcast as being the kind of bread and butter, as in kind of like a boring but stable faction that really relies on its war scrolls.
Yeah.
And I have no reason to think Stormcast is going to be weak coming out the gate. I think the deep strike mechanic has always been strong. Being able to bring a unit back, of course, is nice. And then being able to once per turn once per battle round, really, add 1 to save rolls for that whole battle round, or maybe it's just for that turn for the Stormcast unit that you chose, is pretty good. I mean, like, considering we don't really have a whole lot of other save stacking stuff. So I think these are solid for sure as battle traits. And then the War Scrolls, I think Stormcast kind of relies on its War Scrolls.
Yeah.
So to be fair, are we going to just say we're judging it off of what we saw here in the faction focus, or including all the other War Scrolls we've seen?
I mean, you can do that as well if you want to.
I mean, I liked what we saw here. I mean, I thought this was a pretty impressive first impression if you hadn't seen any of the other Stormcast stuff, from Andrasta to Krondys, and then we saw the Annihilators with shields.
Yeah, this was the only disappointing War Scroll, the Knight Arcanum.
Yeah, it was a bit like, I don't really know how this is going to play into things, but ultimately, I think this is a pretty positive faction focus, especially for an army that is kind of boring. You know, like. So I would rate this relatively highly, especially considering the expectations.
Yeah, I think it looks fine. I was a little bit down on the Heaven Sent ability because it just didn't seem very strong. But now that we know what the generic recursion is going to look like, it's almost always the same thing. It's like half of your models. And usually it's on a 4+. And sure, you can only do this once per battle. And those 4+ things tend to be something that can happen every turn. But at least you're definitely going to get that off, while the 4+ abilities might not go off at the times that you want. I think the only thing that I'm kind of down about the battle trait wise is their finest hour. The fact that you have to use it in your hero phase and you can't do it in theirs. Well, we've seen so many instances where you can also use battle traits in your opponent's hero phase. I feel like that would be fair, or just do it in any points during any point of in the turn, because sometimes you'll pop this like Finest Hour does now, and then your opponent decides not to interact with it, or you fail your charges, and it just doesn't really feel good. So that's the only thing that I'd say is I'm a little bit down on in the battle traits. But as for the rest, especially compared to what all the other battle traits look like now, I feel like this is fair. I thought it was going to be super boring, but it's enough. And the War Scrolls are pretty good. And as you mentioned, the scrolls that we've seen in the faction focus itself are super good. And Stormcast are still that army that can play in any phase and do a little bit of everything. And okay, they're master of none, but at least you get to do everything in Age of Sigmar that you want to do.
Yeah, and especially if we expand it to what's probably coming. This is one of the armies that we know is going to be getting new models and new units real soon, and a new battle tome. So as far as if part of our metric here is also thinking about how I would feel as a Stormcast player, which I am, I'm pretty positive. Like, I'm not worried about Stormcast at all.
Yeah. So where do you want to put them? I feel like we're both leaning towards good traits and scrolls.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily put them at the top once we start sorting in that row there, but I think they're very solid.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the Skaven then. This is an army that we actually know even more about than about Stormcast, so it'll be hard to not let that influence our opinion here. If you don't mind me going first here, Ryan, for the Skaven.
Go for it.
I feel like this might be one of the best armies that we've seen so far, and I also mean that without all the other stuff that we've already seen and also looked good. The battle traits are just so phenomenally good and reliable. If I think about Sylvaneth, that work with woods a little bit in the same way that the Skaven work with their gnawholes, Sylvaneth have to summon those woods with spells, it seems, and Skaven just get them for free. And obviously the gnawholes from Skaven will probably be more vulnerable to damage. But I still feel like they get a pretty easy way of returning those gnawholes. That being said, you also have the always 3 claw steps ahead ability, which seems one of the strongest battle traits that you can have. Making a normal move in your enemy hero phase is very strong. Yeah. So the battle traits seem amazing to me. What do you think about the traits?
I understand the kind of, like, for lack of a better way of saying it, but hurtness of the Skaven players about similar terrain rules. Sylvaneth players, I mean. The thing is, I think, like you just mentioned, the gnawholes are going to be destroyed very quickly. Like we've seen someone mention in a chat somewhere that you can just deep strike and charge a terrain piece, and there you go. And you don't even have to be outside 9 of that terrain piece unless there's a rule that says that it counts as one of your opponent's models or something.
Yeah,
Then
I
you have
mean,
to.
it has a war scroll now, and that you can hurt. Wouldn't you think it would count as a unit?
It depends on how that works, yeah. But in any case, if it's just as it is rules as we see right now, where you only get one at the very beginning and then one per start of the battle round, I think they're going to kill them fast enough, especially if they have any shooting.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so that turns off a lot of these like strong abilities here. So then it really depends on, is there a unit that's going to help you grind some more gnawholes or create more gnawholes on the field? Because Sylvaneth can keep setting them up and keep healing them. And I don't know if there's any way to do that with Skaven, especially with only 6 wounds. We don't, and a 4-up save. We don't know what the save characteristic and health characteristic are going to be on the Sylvaneth Woods. But that said, if you can keep your gnawholes alive, I think Skaven has one of the better set of battle traits for sure. And I agree that always 3 cost steps ahead is great. Plus, like I said about everything I said about Stormcast, as far as new stuff coming out, is going to hold. And when we scroll down to the war scrolls, I actually think that they have got a really good set of war scrolls too. So
I agree.
So I think Skaven's also in that top tier.
Yeah.
And I've been saying that the whole time too. I think the shooting output looks real impressive.
Yes.
For the Giselles, Screech looks great.
Yeah.
The new Warp Lightning Blaster that we've seen in another article is great. Even the Warp Lightning Cannon, I'm not down on. So
yeah. There's nothing that I've seen that I'm like, eh. And that's good, right? It's nice that all of your stuff that you've seen so far seems pretty good. Maybe the only thing that I felt like about is the Gracier Spearhead War Scroll, but that might actually be okay in the standard play. So
I think we did see the leaked somewhere the new one, but and it's also kind of underwhelming. But anyway,
do you want to place it in front of Stormcast or behind?
I think I would give Skaven a little bump above Stormcast for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. Interesting. On to the next one then. Gloomspite Gitz. Why don't you take this one, Ryan?
Yeah, so I play Gitz. This is one of the things I mean when I've thought about this actually a lot recently, is when we first saw this, I immediately saw people selling their Gitz like online. And it's like, in retrospect, they didn't get hit nearly as hard as what a lot of armies have been saying, I think, because their abilities are still strong. Like, they still have the recursion mechanic that we don't know if it's going to be augmentable, but it's still a good recursion mechanic. They still have the moon working the way it does. The squigs got nerfed, but we haven't seen a good chunk of the squig stuff. So we don't know how everything's going to interact. Troggas are still just as strong as they were, if not stronger. I don't know. I think the thing that was sad about this and what we said back then was it feels like they didn't get anything new, and what they did get was just losing some things, like things that tweaked down instead of tweaked up.
Yeah.
And given that they've had a bunch of nerfs in a row, I guess that is bad, feels bad. But again, I think there's so much yet to see from all the different mini factions they've got, like the Spider Fang stuff, that I'm not down on it. I think it's kind of middling. If I even as a Gitz player, and even though they like really hit the squig herd hard, I think that's kind of what they needed. The only thing I don't necessarily agree about is the beast keyword, but I would say that uniformly across the game, that they only count as one model. I think that's rough. But as far as turning them down to 1 health, I'm totally okay with that. So. And as long as the other squig units can pull their weight, I think squig players will just have a different use for squig herd as like a screen. So
yeah.
I
tend to agree with everything that you've said so far. I feel like the heroes that we've seen here in the Gobapalooza looked good. Scragrots also still look good. I think they lost a lot of value throughout the entire index that we've seen so far, at least, but they needed to as well. So don't hate on me, Gitz players. Sorry. But I think the army will still play very much in the same way. And I do feel like Sneaky Distraction is a very strong spell to have on an unlimited amount.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if we're counting like spells for the battle traits, then I'm changing my opinion about the battle traits a little bit. But I would be disappointed if this was my only thing I had for battle traits. It's just so boring.
Well, I mean, but it is the flavor of the army, and
Yeah.
onto that one page. And the shrine, if it kind of can be considered a battle trait, is still very strong. It's probably one of the most durable terrain pieces we have thus far.
Let me quickly scroll to it.
Yeah. And I don't know if we're going to have sources of healing faction terrain, but if you can, that's obviously going to be a big part of what the Gitz are going to be trying to do, is really protect their own shrine.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of the War Machine keyword. Maybe they're getting some new units soon. Who knows? So I don't know. I'm not down on this. The thing is, I don't know where to put it on our tier list.
Yeah, it's difficult, right?
It's kind of neither in good traits nor good scrolls, but it's not. I don't know. I'd put it somewhere in the middle, at least the very top of meh, but maybe in good scrolls, just to kind of represent something in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I was also leaning towards good scrolls rather than good traits.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say good scrolls because the squig herd got nerfed so hard, but all the other stuff seems fine.
Yeah, I think there's a part of me that's kind of expecting that everything's going to make more sense sooner than later, but it doesn't. In reading the traits, I'm not like, oh, the army's dead. Like, I understand.
Sure. Yeah, it's not Slannesh.
It's not Slannesh, and it's not even Sylvaneth. Like, it doesn't. To me, it feels like there's still plenty of potential for the army to be strong.
Yeah. Okay. On to the next one. Nighthaunt. This is something that I've changed my opinion about a little bit. I'm not actually sure whether I was super hyped for it, but I'm hyped for it now in a lot of ways. How do you feel about this now?
That's a good summary. I even though we were comparing them to what they lost, I think this moving from the charge thing is incredible.
Yeah.
I think some of the rules they still have are solid, and I was always from the day one saying that I thought the War Scrolls really got a cool buff, and a creative kind of spin on how the army's playing. So I'm overall very positive about this. In fact, too long didn't read. I think all 4 of the Death Armies stayed pretty strong. It really depends on what the rest we're going to see, but I'm not down on this as long as the rest of the stuff can hold up. But I don't think these are bad battle traits. I just think it's bad compared to what it was.
Yeah. I struggled to find things that I didn't like about this army now. I think the only thing that I'm missing is you can't stack the massive bonuses on a single unit anymore. And some of the auras of dread have some weird conditions that have to be met. Like you can only do this one for war machines, for example. And then the last one is only for heroes. But they still remain pretty good. And the war scrolls overall look solid, to say the least. And again, Shade Mist is such an amazing spell to have on an unlimited supply of.
Yeah, Olinder's a little boring, but Reichmore got buffed. I really like what they did to the Dreadblade heroes, turning them into a unit. And I think they have an interesting techie function. The Banshees still look real strong. Anti-magic tech. And then, we're scrolling down to the Knight of Shrouds. That was weird that they showed us the hero on the but I don't have really a strong opinion on this guy. But overall, I feel like the army is in a totally reasonable place. I'd put them in at least good battle traits, if not strong in both.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards strong in both as well.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Where do you want to put them?
I don't think they're Skaven level, and I think Stormcast is going to have undeniably good War Scroll.
Yes.
So I'm going to put them under Stormcast personally.
Man, we're in sync. I mean, I was thinking the exact same thing. So that's fun. Okay, good.
Nice.
On to the next one, because this is going to take ages if if we don't speed it up a little bit. So cities, I'm excited to talk about. I'm going to try to not talk about it too long. But overall, Ryan, after I've seen everything so far, this might be one of the armies that I'm most hyped about, because I just love how clean this is now. I love that you can do a command for on every unit. They're not tied to a specific keyword anymore, and if it's on a specific keyword, it might even buff them further. It's clean, it's easy to understand. There's something to do in almost every phase. I think I will have to say though, you can't do it on every unit anymore, so you will feel a little bit nerfed there. That being said, I am compared to how hyped I am for the battle traits, I'm super down on the war scrolls that we've seen.
Oh yes, I would. That's the first, maybe one of the only examples that I think we're going to have where I would actually switch the order in the tier list of war scrolls and battle traits, because well, I still agree that having good battle traits means that if there are other war scrolls that we haven't seen yet, then they're still going to be good.
That's the only reason why we put it on top there, because battle traits, we got to see everything from it, and for war scrolls we see 5 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I am really disappointed by the war scrolls.
Yeah, the thing is, the scrolls that we get to see are so lame or bad that you can't even think about a way that those battle traits that you did get to see can improve it enough to be valuable. Like Talia is still meh at best. The Fizzle Major is okay, but then the Free Guild Cavaliers are just disappointing now.
That hit and wound profile is just so brutal on them. Especially considering what we've seen with like Blood Knights and stuff. They better be cheaper, because they're just not in the elite cavalry range anymore.
Yeah, stat-wise, I mean, for the stat wheel, they're very much alike, but the melee weapons, damn.
Yeah, and
the ability is also pretty bad.
Yeah,
this could easily have been on a 3+ without it feeling good enough, and on a 2+ it would feel so good, but then that would at least offset this mediocreness.
I get why they're trying to do the humans dirty like that, but God,
dirty humans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the steel helms also feel super meh now.
Yep.
I was a little bit hyped about the consecrate the land, but the more I read it, the more I'm like, why would you even bother making this complicated?
Yeah. I mean, it was always complicated, but I agree. The battle traits are fantastic and flexible and modular and more streamlined than they were before. And the war scrolls suck. I mean, or they're mediocre. So let's put it in good traits, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing this above Gitz seems weird now.
We just don't know enough about Gitz to be able to say. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, onto the KO then, the Kharadron Overlords. This is one of your main armies. I still feel very much the same about them compared to what I felt back then, and to be honest, the same to how I feel about them in 3rd edition.
What's that?
Well, I hate them in 3rd edition with a burning passion. I don't think they'll be as bad now. The fact that they have to deploy their units outside of their ships makes it so much easier to understand what's happening. Why I really dislike him in 3rd edition is because I don't understand what's in the ships. I mean, the KO player can tell me as many times as they want. It's still very hard to memorize that for me. I mean, they look so much alike as well, those models. They're like, okay, I can't see the difference between your 3 heroes. Sorry, even if you put them next to your ship. So that will still be difficult now, but at least you get to see whether it's Thunderers or your Sky Pikes or whatever. What are they called? The Balloon Boys?
Sky Wardens?
Yeah, Sky Wardens, that's the one. That being said, I still think they nailed what this army wants to do. It's still going to move a lot. It's still going to fly through the sky a lot. Shooting has been neutered a little bit, but I feel like they gave what the shooting loss they gave to the melee part of the army, at least to the scrolls that we've seen so far. So I think the overall army is still going to look very good on both on the table and in the rules. How do you feel about them now?
My opinion stays the same with their output. I just don't know where they're getting their output from, even with everything we've seen. But I'm totally okay with the movement shenanigans. It's a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
But I think the battle trait's very strong.
Yeah.
I wish the code was still there.
I agree.
I think that's really flavorful, and it's a bummer that it's gone. But it might come back if they get a new book.
Well, I think it's going to be on a code rights.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a point that I wanted to make about Scragrot getting nerfed a bit, is that I like that, generally speaking, we've seen a lot of them pushing in these indexes towards in 4th edition to having less emphasis on certain units that have to come along to make you play your game the way you're used to. That said, then again, we've seen some War Scrolls that seem to go the other direction. Like Usharon brings the whole feck Grand Illusions or whatever they're called. And so I could kind of see your point, but I hope they don't. Like I don't want a whole model to be determining whether I get a flavor element to my army again.
Yeah, I think it's gonna happen though, Ryan, because you saw it with the rituals on the Tidecaster as well, and on a lot of other smaller heroes as well.
That's fair. Again, we don't know. This is just the indexes. Maybe with the books, they'll expand it. But looking at all these War Scrolls for the frigate, I just don't get where all the damage is coming. The Thunderers aren't doing what they once did, and unless they get some really good buff pieces with the heroes, and then and then also the Sky Wardens, I'm not super convinced are going to be pulling their weight, but they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just I'm still waiting to see how everything comes together.
The only thing that I'm really worried about for KO players is the transport capacity. The fact that you can only transport 2 units and a hero counts as a unit is going to make things so much more difficult for you.
Yeah, we got to see how the gun haulers work. I assume it's going to be 6 models, and then how the ironclads work. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah. So I'd still put these in good battle trades.
Yeah, definitely good trades, because I feel like their artifacts just got better than the previous versions, and the same. So that's also battle trades in my eyes, at least. But would you put them in good scrolls as well?
No, I would not yet. So interestingly, if we put them next to cities, I'm tempted to say that their traits themselves are worse than the cities ones.
Yes.
Because the city will apply it in a more universal way to your whole.
Yep.
Stuff is great, but it doesn't win you the game necessarily.
But their overall scrolls are much better.
I do think their scrolls are better than cities. So then it's a kind of a toss up. Maybe we throw it in there for now and come back to it later.
Yeah, sure.
Unless you really want to put them in the top category, but I just don't.
I don't want to put them in the top category. I do want to put them before cities, though, because as a whole, as in the faction folks as a whole, I feel like KO still has much more promise than cities does.
That's fair. Sure. But I do think battle traits themselves are a little bit weaker than what we see in cities.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, on to Tzeentch. So Tzeentch retained its Destiny dice, which is amazing and super strong. But then they got this weird rule, or something new, the Weird Flame, and then you have the chance of doing mortal damage, but it's the way that you apply Weird Flame is also very strange. So I'm not totally keen on the Weird Flame, though I can see if there are enough ways in the book to dish it out, it's gonna be a nuisance. Like a little bit the same. I feel a little bit the same with the disease for Nurgle.
Yeah.
Just from seeing the battle tree, it seems meh. But if there's enough War Scrolls or stuff in the book to apply it more easily, as is with the Weird Flame or the disease points, it's gonna be so strong.
Yeah, I mean, I play Eternal Conflag anyway, so I'm used to focusing on the shooting stuff. And in a meta that's kind of steering away from, or they're saying they're steering away from shooting, I feel like Tzeentch is probably still going to have one of the better shooting armies, especially considering this comes on top of it. So I'm not down on it at all, but it does make it sound like magic is going to be a little bit less their thing than it maybe previously was. Like I have a feeling some of the spells are going to be less direct damagey, and you're going to be more relying on other synergies. But Kairos, as we're about to look at, is one of the best things we've seen in the game in terms of War Scrolls. I mean, determining your like that whole battle tactics thing is like fourth wall breaking. He's like being basically another player playing next to you. He's aware of battle tactics, you know. So I think they're in the top tier from what I've seen here, and like I don't know if they're on par with some of the other stuff we've seen, but like let's scroll through some of the other War Scrolls because it's been a minute for me.
So the Gaunt Summoner still does what the Gaunt Summoner would do. I feel like he's very much the same.
Yeah, the question is, do we know more about the deployment thing? Can he set unlimited units in him or just one? I think it's unlimited.
Unlimited, yeah.
Yeah, if he can, I mean, I think that's real interesting. You got to protect him, of course. I don't hate the Pink's War Scroll, by the way. I mean, when we get
I
to
thought the
that,
Pink's War Scroll and the Curseling were pretty weak.
yeah. I mean, it just depends on the price point.
Yeah.
On these guys. That's my main change there.
It's just that I feel like whatever the blue horror is gonna look like, I think I'll be hard pressed to find a reason to bring pinks over the blues.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I'm really leaning towards.
But the thing is, they're trying to fix, like, as much as I'm going to be talking about things from my perspective as a player of the armies, but at the same time, I also hate feel bad moments, and I play against my own almost as much as I play them myself.
Yeah.
And so I know pink horrors suck to play against, and if they're gonna if they're gonna make a new rule that changes that so that it's just a quality of life improvement for everyone else, even if it means nerfing the Tzeentch players' experience or strength a little bit, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So like I said with Squig Herd, same story. So I'm looking at the health of the game in general, and that makes me kind of like it balances out a little bit.
Yeah. So here's my question to you, Ryan, because in my notes I wrote down that I do wonder how I do wonder how impactful the loss of summoning is going to be for this army. Do you have any way to gauge that, like as a Tzeentch player?
The thing is, the only recursion we've really seen is for the spawns, but you have to take them in your list to begin with. Now there is a keyword for as a potential fate, which I don't think is only going to be on the spawns. So we just don't know what other units might have that ability, but it's not on the Pink's War Scroll. So you would think that they would have used it, just said something about the spawns themselves instead of giving it a whole new rules text bold as a potential fate if it didn't apply to other units. So I have no idea, but I still think Destiny Dice is one of the strongest mechanics in the game.
And they have 2 spell lores, which is also a huge perk compared to the generic 1 spell lore that most of us get.
Yes. And Kairos is a boss. I mean, like, so these are at least in the second tier, if not the best.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I want to put them at good traits because anything besides Kairos didn't really impress me as much. Because I just don't see where you're going to make your damage come from. It's going to greatly depend on what the spells look like. But I played against a lot of hero-centric Tzeentch armies where I just got hammered to death with mortal damage from spells. So I haven't played against your Eternal Conflict list. I think I played against it once, maybe.
I'm not sure.
But I do feel like it's going to feel more fair. And I agree with you. The feel bad's going to be way less present than it was before. So where do you want to put these? I'll leave it up to you.
Let's put them in good traits right now. I'll go with that. Yeah, that's
Before
fine.
cities?
It's fine right now. I mean, the worst Kairos alone is better than anything we saw, but and Destiny Dice are so strong. I say put it before cities. Yeah, might as well. We can adjust later.
Sure. Okay. So this was the first visceral disappointing reaction that I had to a faction focus. I don't actually, in hindsight, I am a little bit over it now, and I don't actually know where that major disappointment came from. Maybe I didn't have enough sleep back then, but that being said, I didn't have enough sleep now either. So I do still feel very disappointed by it, Ryan. I feel like the battle traits contradict each other. You have one that encourages charging and one that encourages running, but there's no way to do both.
Yeah.
And half of your traits are dependent on Feast of Flesh, and that only triggers on a 3 on a d6 or a 4, obviously. So I still feel very, very down on the battle traits.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's worth talking about. I think these battle traits kind of suck.
Yeah. Onto the scrolls then?
Yeah.
I mean, because even this, like, I would consider this a battle trait as well, is so bad. Call of the Blizzard.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not get into it again, but...
Kragnos is good, but he's not Ogors. I mean, like,
yes, that's the thing. The only plus thing that I wrote about Ogors is Kragnos looks strong. Gaining a ward is nice, though his normal save has gone down. He still seems like a beast, and he's also a force multiplier, but he's not an ogre specific thing. So
I mean, except that they lost their speed, and so now they need him to kind of make up for it. And then he's like an auto take, and that's kind of a feel bad. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think Kragnos looks strong, and I'm okay with his nerf to his save, but God, why is he in this article? I don't know.
Yeah. It just speaks volumes about how how meh the rest of the stuff must have been, I guess. I also feel like the rampage that they get on their beasts are just not as impressive as a lot of things that we've seen. Their survivability has gone down a bunch. A 4-up save without any wards is going to really hamper their survivability, especially with only a 10-inch move. So I just can't really see how this army is going to deal with anything.
Yeah, I think they're going to be real weak to shooting. It really depends on if they can get across the field fast enough. Now, we've seen a universal increase in fast units' speed, usually by about 2 inches. But they lost about 4 because they lost 2, and then they lost the hungry ability.
Yeah.
I like the Gorger Maw Pack, but that sounds like it's also just a way for a GW to sell more of a Warcry kit.
Yeah, because both the Gluttons and the Lit Belchers just don't impress me at all.
Well, it's a Spearhead War Scroll, but I'm going to put this in Slannesh or Meh, one or the other. I'm tempted to say Slannesh.
Same. Let's do it because otherwise
it's higher than Slannesh. It's higher than Slannesh, but it's not. Yeah.
Well, it's higher. It's higher. Okay, Flesh Eaters. I think we can cover this pretty quickly, I feel, but I'll hear you out first.
Too long didn't read. GW did the right thing and didn't change this army much because they had the last book. And I think of all the armies, this is the one that changed the least. Like, personally, losing the Grand Illusions or getting it put onto Usharan, and then he can only bring 1 instead of 2 is rough, but look at what they have on this page. And it's a solid set of rules. I think it might even be the strongest death army right now. And so I would put this immediately at the top category.
Same.
And I think that's what GW should have done, considering they screwed over the FEC players at the end of 3rd edition. This index looks very strong. I have no reason to think the units that are in this that they showed us are going to be bad. In fact, they do basically what they did with slight nerfs. Big fan. So
the only downside that I've found about this article so far is Usharan might be an auto-include.
Yeah, but even Nick is excited about that because he didn't feel like he felt like he was too easy to remove.
Yeah, I'm happy. I would be happy about it because I love those big ass models, but I can imagine some people not wanting to have to run your big model every time.
Yeah. So
I put them in front of everything.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go.
Cool. Glad we covered that quickly. Fyreslayers, also another very interesting army that I feel a little bit more positive about, even though I was already quite positive about them. I just love the entire change that they went through with the runes. It is so much more fun than it was before. You don't actually have to... you don't have to do it at the start of your turn anymore. You can do it whenever you need it. The rules are all good, except maybe the Rune of Farsight seems meh. But as far as the other runes go, they all seem pretty good. I also felt that the War Scrolls Rhine were pretty potent in and of themselves, but they also synergize well with one another. So you've got both of these these perks where you can run them solo if you lose your hero, for example, but they're even stronger if you run them in pairs or something like that. So I feel like the Fyreslayers came off real good here. The only thing that I didn't like about his article is the smaller hero that we saw, the Rune Master, because his reaction to the Urgold rune ability is, super tempting, but also very hard to pull off because you have to charge him, and then the Rune of Relentless Zeal adding 1 to run rolls doesn't actually work half the time because you only proc the Rune of Relentless Zeal in the charge phase, so that's a little bit weird.
Well, I think they just need to FAQ it.
Yeah.
But my only problem with this faction, I do think it got better from what it had been. My only problem with this faction is that they still don't have a varied enough unit set.
And they're still very slow.
That's what I mean, too. Like, they don't have... at least with what we've seen, they don't have a real good way of getting around the battlefield enough.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of rock, paper, scissors that's just going to turn these guys off.
Yeah.
But I think they're solid. I mean, like, I would put them probably in good battle traits. I don't know if I'd put them all the way up in good traits and scrolls, just because I don't know if the army itself is going to be able to compete
Okay.
with what we just said about speed. I mean, I don't know. What are you thinking?
I was almost leaning. I want to place him here between green and yellow.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards good traits and scrolls, but then if I compare them to Nighthaunt and the other stuff that's in good traits and scrolls so far, I do feel like they're just too slow to be there. But other than their speed, I think they're good.
100%. If they have some movement shenanigans that we haven't yet seen, then I think they immediately go in the top category.
Yeah.
Want to put them in front of KO for right now, and then we come back to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dwarven Bros.
Yeah.
Ideneth, so you were a little bit disappointed by this faction focus, not because it was bad, but just you wanted to see a glow up or a change in their identity a little bit, maybe?
Yeah. So let's reevaluate that now. I mean, they lost Forgotten Nightmares, so that's not here anymore. Yeah. Obviously, the tides of death are basically the same, except there's more things you can do in your opponent's turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got a deep strike mechanic. That's always, that was always available, but now it's not bound to the Soul Scryer.
Yeah.
And it's a whole regiment, which is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Scroll down a bit for me. I'd like to remind myself what the rest of the stuff we saw was.
Yeah, so maybe if I can recap it for you. I think we both. I was hyped about the Eidolon. You were a little bit down on it. You couldn't really see whether it would be valuable enough, but I thought a 3-up save and a 5-up ward was great. We both really disliked the Tidecaster, having to roll a 3 to get her rituals off. Mm-hmm. Seemed meh. And then the Allopaxes remained pretty useful, but the other stuff, like the Ishling Guard, you absolutely were distraught about this unit, and I still feel that way about it. It still seems very weird. And the Thralls with the Spirit War Scrolls seemed somewhat the same as they were now, but a little bit weaker maybe in some regards. But that's a Spirit War Scroll. So I do feel like the battle traits in my eyes are good. The scrolls so far I wouldn't be too hyped about.
Yeah, I agree. I could see them getting put in that second tier. The problem is we've got everything. Maybe we're going to have to, I don't know if that's part of our design for this rubric, is that we need to have it relatively evenly distributed. I don't know if that's necessary.
Yeah.
But if not, then I'm okay putting these in the second rank there. I don't know that the War Scrolls are better than the battle traits.
Yeah.
The battle traits are good. So
good scrolls or good traits, right?
Good traits. Maybe at the bottom end. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Right. On to Nurgle.
I was down on this one.
Yeah, same.
I mean, they still do the same kind of damage that we expect, just in a different way with spreading the disease. Everything's centered around the disease, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. The wheel is gone. Obviously, summoning seems to be basically gone with these guys.
Yeah.
The Great Unclean One's bringing back so that's where your recursion sitting is, bringing back some units. But the ones he could target, I wasn't very impressed with.
Yeah.
The War Scrolls, I know people in the Nurgle article or in the comment section were much more positive than I was. Let's scroll down maybe to those units real quick.
Yeah, I was super bored out by the Great Unclean One, and I was majorly disappointed by the Blight Kings.
Yeah. And Sloppity Vilepiper is kind of gone in my view, but other people have argued not. But I
still think its buffs are fine. It's just going to be way cheaper, but you're going to have to pay for him now because you used to summon him most of the time.
Yeah.
I think on a 2+ is generous compared to, let's say, the Tidecaster, who will probably be at the same price, and she's on a 3+.
Yeah. I mean, he's not a wizard, so I don't know. The Harbinger looks decent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the one I kept referring to that could reduce a control score, and I wanted to know if you could go below whatever, but we know it can only go down to, well, this is control score. They said characteristics can't go below 1. So now I don't know what to think about that. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the Blight Kings just seem weird to me. I don't understand the difference between this War Scroll and the Plague Bringers.
The Plague Bearers?
Plague Bearers, yeah. I mean, obviously there is a difference, but they serve the same purpose in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just a tank unit that's meant to go grab objectives. They're not really doing a lot of work.
Too long didn't read about this article is it seems to play the same way. You plonk down your units and you're just going to sit there. And if you spread your disease well enough, you're going to dominate. And if you don't, you're going to lose.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think our rubric has a glaring hole in it for where I'd like to put these guys, which is I maybe Matt is the right place because
that's where
I feel like it really depends on what we see with the rest. And like I said in my review, I think Nurgle, it's one of its defining characteristics as a rules set has always been that on paper, it doesn't look like it's going to do as good as it actually does.
Yeah.
And so in a certain sense, I would put it in good traits because I think it's eventually going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But for the moment, just on the surface of things, I'm putting it in meh, I think.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think this is the army that I'm gonna be the most surprised about, and not because I expect it to behave that way, because it's Nurgle, but it's exactly as you said. Like on paper, the rules seem meh, as you mentioned, and the War Scrolls do that as well. But there's still solid blocks of a good save with a ward save, a bunch of wounds. I mean, the game is still won by taking objectives and by winning combats, and Nurgle probably won't win the combat, but it probably won't lose it either. And then I'm feeling like, okay, the disease mechanic seems weak, but if they can spread it quickly enough, I imagine there'll be ways to do it with War Scroll abilities as well. Once you get a whole army infected with disease, that's going to start to rack up real quickly.
Yeah, and the 5-up ward that's on everyone is really strong.
Yes.
So I'm partly also saying let's put it down in Met because we need to have something in the distribution down there. But for those out there that are more positive on Nurgle, I totally also would buy the argument that they belong in at least good traits.
Yeah, like the thing why we probably feel a little bit bad about the mech category is because it's a tier list, but I would actually put the mech category outside of the tier list. It's just, it doesn't excite me at all.
Yes, I agree.
It seems boring. Both the battle traits and the scrolls seem boring, and that's why I put it in mech. Not because of its strength, but just because it's, what's exciting about this?
Yeah.
Is that a fair conclusion?
Yeah, and then it makes me really wonder what we're going to do with Gitz at the end of the video, but we'll come back to it.
Sure, yeah. Okay, Sons. I have no clue about this army, Ryan. I don't know how to rate this at all. It seems meh once again, but I don't know. What do you think about it? I listened to your video and I was like, oh, yeah.
There were people that wanted to say that they think Sons is going to be great even with
Sorry, can you repeat the last bit?
Yeah. There were people that were arguing that it was going to be great, even with my doubts about the control score going down so quickly. I think this is going to largely come down to two main things: is how cheap the Gargants are, the megas especially. Mm-hmm. Like, can you fit more in your army than you used to be able to?
Yep.
Because the control score is going to be a problem there, I think.
That's what I wrote down as well. Mm-hmm.
And second is what's the DPS check going to be like in the meta?
Yeah.
Okay, so can people answer killing a Gargant per turn, or at least mostly almost like in a battle round, at least taking out a Gargant every battle round? Will you be able to do that? And that question still remains open to me because we haven't seen enough of the meta representation of the War Scrolls to know, are you going to be able to chop these guys down fast enough, or at least get their control score down fast enough? Mm-hmm. I think probably yes to the second question of getting their control, because all you got to do is put 15 wounds on them and all of a sudden 10 a model.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't know. I think Broad looks strong, all things considered. Mm-hmm. I even thought the next War Scroll we saw was decent. Is the Gatebreak, the one that's not based off of how many? Yeah, this one was okay, but then it was the next one, the War Stomper, that's based off of how many the Titanic Boulder Club in the upper right hand corner. you do the math on this, it doesn't come out as well as you would like it to compared to what it used to do.
Yeah.
But I don't know how important that is anymore. Maybe it's still enough. I still would rather take the unit before this, I think, the Gatebreaker. I don't know. And I'm not, Gargants is something that just hasn't been in the meta as much as it once was. So I think it's going to be a wait and see on this, but I'm still sitting in kind of like, I would even be willing to put it in good War Scrolls as long as the price is right on these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
I wrote down like, can you fit in an extra Gargant now?
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that one. And it did, as you said, if I'm looking at the battle traits, they're flavorful. It's cool that they get just a bunch of rampages, but I don't see anything that'll improve their way of playing the game. It's all damage. Or, I mean, you have one thing that turns off command ability, but I would love to see something that interacts with control, for example, or with movement, just so that if they're whittled down to a point where they're not useful anymore, they still can do something with their traits.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough on this, and everyone's going to have an opinion and be strong opinion about all these things we're saying.
Yeah.
I can see a version of reality, just like I just said about Nurgle, where they end up being much higher on the list. It really depends on the DPS check.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm just not super inspired. But honestly, I kind of never been a fan of this army existing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no offense to the people out there, but I just don't.
The concept is cool, but it's weird to play against, and it's weird to play with it as well.
Yeah, it just kind of is what do we call it? Like a breaking like the pillars or what, I forget what the term is, but it doesn't really play with the game the way I'm used to thinking of the game. And
it's a little bit of an outlier, right? An exception to what all the armies have in common.
Yeah, I would rather that Beastclaw stayed doing what Beastclaw was, and they remained like 400-ish point models doing what they do, than this army existing. And I'm sorry to the Gargants players out there, but like, when the 3rd edition book came out, and then they really started trying to incentivize you to bring the mini Gargants, I was like, yes, there needs to be a way to make this army more varied, have more list building options, do some cool stuff. I think they need to expand the range and have like their dogs that they can bring, like Gargant dogs, and have like some cool, maybe a long range Gargant or something. I don't know, like expand the range so that there's less just only big guys. And I think maybe I could be sold on this army in general. So I'm biased, and I don't know if I should be the one deciding where they sit on the thing. So
I'm inclined to say good scrolls.
Sure, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah. On to the OCR Bone Reapers. So I know that you said that Fek might be the strongest, but once I was going over these guys again, I was still very impressed with what I saw. The battle traits are just so good still.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like cities. It's kind of an answer to cities, but being so between cities and Stormcast level of elite, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got the cities battle type, battle traits, but more of a Stormcast vibe about being just super elite.
Mm-hmm. I just thought that they would be limited in some way, but I feel like this is even more powerful than one of their previous incarnations in certain ways.
Yeah, I mean, the people in the comments are complaining or mentioning that they have to castle up. I'm a castle player myself, and I don't think there's anything wrong with castles. I think it feels like it's part of the way warfare is. You've got people standing around a command group that's trying to make sure that the soldiers are independently working to their maximum efficiency. And this army is an army of like phalanxes. Like to me, it makes sense. So yeah, maybe you're not sending your guys off to the sides as much as you used to. But I think that's okay. Like,
I mean, we saw some really good War Scrolls, Ryan. So you're going to want to bring at least 3 heroes anyway. And you're going to keep those heroes close to your units as well, because you want to have the guarded hero ability on them. So they can't be targeted outside of 12 inches. So I don't really see the argument, to be honest. I understand Holy Within 12 isn't as far as you would want it to be. But as a Luneth player who's always played with a lot of small heroes and then keeping units nearby just to protect them, for example, it's not that hard to do, and it doesn't feel weird. I would say that actually with playing Teclis, for example, that feels castling in a bad way because you need to stay too close to him at all times. But I don't necessarily think that you need to go out of your way to castle up here. I feel like you wanted to do that from the get-go as anyway.
Yeah.
Major exception is probably the horses.
Yeah, but I mean that's always good to have like one advanced, kind of shock troop or scouting troop to have. I think that's pretty nice. And if this is kind of like a meta metric for me, but this is the only maybe faction focus that I read that made me instantly want to play the army.
Yeah, you were so hyped about the crawlers, and I understand I was as well, because the crawlers are probably the best model in OCRs together with Catacross. So
yeah. It's not just that Death has got a hole. It's like the Grand Alliance that I don't really gravitate towards, but that they changed it enough to make me want to play a Death army says something to me. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely put this one pretty high on the list.
Yeah, I feel like all of the War Scrolls are good except for maybe the Necropolis Stalkers.
Yeah. But they took kind of like where do they fit in this army nerf? But
exactly. But all of their stuff is totally fine. Their spells seem okay. Their battle rates are amazing. Definitely up there with the best ones.
Yeah.
Would you place it before Skaven?
I think Skaven out of the gate is going to be really good as an army. It's just they're a launch army with already good War Scrolls that we've seen and good traits. Difficult.
I think OCRX will be stronger than Skaven.
Sure, I'm okay with that for right now. Yeah,
they can't help themselves.
Yeah,
the rules writing team, they can't do anything about the OCRs. They always need to be strong.
Well, they were pretty weak until they got, because they weren't playing with the 3rd edition command abilities for a while, and you didn't see them in the meta much. But as soon as they got that book, they really shot back up.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we at? Oh, daughters. That doesn't feel as long as ago as long. Jeez, I don't know. You understand what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how to phrase it. I still feel the same way because it's not as far back as the other ones. I feel pretty much the same about this army now. Has your opinion changed?
No, I was kind of middling on this one. So
yeah, I like the blood rights. It's still a nice table. I still think All Out Slaughter is too weak. It should be free, or it should be, 3 and then do it whenever you want to, something like that.
Yeah.
I think Marathi is still pretty good. The Shadow Queen's amazing, although she lost a lot of her force multiplier abilities.
Yeah.
The Sisters looked fine. You kind of convinced me on that they would be okay. The Heartrenders look good, but then the shooty snakes look a little bit too basic to fill your entire list with them.
Yeah, I would put these on like good scrolls. I think the good traits is a fine way to describe it, but remember how glass cannony they are. The getting a new ability every turn only works if you still have models on the table.
Yeah,
and I think the scrolls are solid. In fact, yeah, I might be inclined. I think I would put these higher than Gitz personally.
Okay, cool.
But that's just for right now. I mean, again, they're in the middle of the pack, and it really depends on how everything else looks. But it was a little uninspired. That if we had like how inspired we were with these, I would put them kind of like in the meh category, because it just didn't change anything for me of what I think of daughters. Mm-hmm. Whereas like I'm much more inspired to play Fyreslayers now, just because I think it got more interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay, on to an army I know nothing about. My opinion has changed quite drastically about how I feel about Lumineth now, and I kind of want you to balance my opinion out a little bit, because I am obviously biased and super emotionally tied to this army, but I'm really down on it the last couple of weeks.
Okay, what changed? Because you were pretty okay with it for a while.
Yeah, so I played a couple of games since I did the review, and I started thinking going in my head like, okay, I won't have this ability anymore in 4th edition. Okay, I won't have this ability anymore in 4th edition. What I think will be missing dearly is any way of survivability. We had the Aether Quartz and a -1 to hit built in on all Venari stuff and 8 quartz on everything, obviously. And that made such a huge difference. I mean, Dawn Riders were useless, but if you Aether Quartz them, all out offense them, and then had a -1 to hit, I mean, you were a casualty of that ability. It's just so hard to grind through them. Now you don't have that anymore. Obviously, you can go with the Venari Facet of Warrior. You can go with a battle formation to have it on all of your Venari. But I just don't see how they're gonna survive. And from the scrolls that we've seen, and we've seen quite a lot of scrolls, we haven't seen enough dedicated damage or spell protection to keep us to offset the loss of Aether Quartz, for example. That being said, I think the war scrolls for the heroes that we've seen are stellar. Both Alani and Elithor and Seraphon seem very good, and I also really like the Move Like the Wind command traits. But my overall feeling of how effective this army is gonna be has changed a lot. That being said, there isn't no bracket for that in the tier. There's no tier for that because the fact that I feel that they're too squishy now is not something that I can really rate in the tier list that we've made, at least, because I still think the battle traits are super cool. And I do still think the battle scrolls are fine in and of themselves. I just don't think that the battle traits balance out the weakness of the scrolls.
Okay, well...
Would you be able to convince me of something different?
Well, let's scroll down to a couple of the scrolls, because we're supposed to be comparing the ones we see first. Sanctum is kind of cool. Alanya and Elithor are doing some crazy damage if they get high enough in the battle round.
Mm-hmm. The 4-up ward is nice. They lost the point of save, but the 4-up ward and the building 5-up ward kind of offsets that a little bit.
Yeah. And the teleport's great.
Yeah.
Severeth is still strong.
Very good.
And I imagine that the wind spirits are still going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Stone Guard are fine. I mean, we've seen other armies take similar debuffs, like we were just talking about, like the Ogre Gluttons and like the Putrid Blight Kings. I think these guys are still doing just fine, given all things. Depends on the price, depends on the rest of the buffs.
The thing is, they don't have their built-in ignore -1 rent ignore 1 rent anymore. And obviously, you can give that with a Fest of War, but as they are now, if you pick them in the Alrith Nation, in Umetrica, you would ignore 2 rent. And I know rent has gone down somewhat, but I don't feel like this unit embodies the tankiness aspect, and it definitely doesn't embody the damage aspect for me, at least not enough.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a role to play as like your objective sitters, and then putting out enough damage to kind of make sure, you know, someone thinks twice about coming there, I guess.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I'm a little bit aching about, I suppose, is these units seem like this is a unit that you would bring one of, maybe a big unit of 10 to sit on an objective, and that's that, right? And they would be fine by doing that. The thing is, if you only have the 1 unit and you spend your Facet of War on that, your entire army is losing out. I feel like with the Facets of War, you're only allowed to bring 2 keywords. One to have permanently on, and then one to also have permanently on, because if you don't buff up these guys with a Facet of War, I don't really understand what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, you don't, like, it's always kind of been that if you're going to play in a Metrica build, you...
Yeah.
And so now what you just said is now you can take 2.
Yeah.
Like, you can split your army into 2 halves instead of going all in Metrica, all Huracan.
Yeah. Is that your WhatsApp, by the way?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't usually record with this. I don't know how to turn it off. I'll see what I can do.
No, it's good. It's good. It's fine. I was just wondering whether it was mine at some point, but I don't see it in my browser.
Yeah, I'll see if I can figure it out. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. It seems like it went a little bit more flexible than taking it on the way it used to be, that you just had to focus on one. So
yeah. Whereas I would say, you had the identity of the scroll that you now have in the battle traits was on the scroll. So you could already combine them as well as you can do that now. You just got something even extra with the previous version, which is why you probably didn't want to combine them. But yeah, I mean, I would still put them in the green because the battle trees in of themselves and the scrolls look fine. I just really wonder how we're going to play the game because we were always a controlling army. We were never big on survivability. We were never big on huge burst damage, so I'm fine with that. It's just that we seem to have lost a lot of our control stuff, and that worries me a little bit that there's nothing to balance that out. But I would still put these guys in the top bracket so far.
Okay.
Would you agree?
I thought you just said you were down on them.
Yeah, I'm down on the way they're gonna play, but I still think that what we've seen from a faction focus, I mean, if specifically just what this says, good traits, yes, good scroll, yes. But good synergy, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, where do you want to put them?
At the very back, in green.
I trust your opinion on this. I think I turned off the sound, by the way.
Okay, thank you. It was fine, by the way. It was only like a small blip, but it was interesting if you could shut it off. Okay.
Well, here we go. They got their own category for a reason.
Has your opinion changed?
No, but I do think, like you've said, we've talked outside of this chat, that there's a really good chance that the army will be making more sense once we see everything, glutos, all the other buff pieces. Maybe something that really punishes people for using those temptation dice even more, or that really makes you tanky when you get that charge, or who knows, maybe they've got something that turns off their ability to contest an objective. So like if they're using that 2d6 charge or the 12-inch charge to come in and steal a battle tactic from you, that somehow you can deny it.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? But right now, I still say they're the worst army we've seen, because the scrolls aren't making up for what their battle traits do.
Yeah. Shalaxi's scroll was actually fine.
Yeah,
and I was pretty hyped about them, but it's kind of what you say, that even if they get a lot of stuff in the book that balances this out, it's gonna have to be so good, and it's also gonna be obligatory, right? You're not gonna be able to build an army without those units because this is so obviously terrible. Like you'll need so many tools in your army to offset this, even if all your war scrolls are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, some of the war scrolls were totally fine, but it just, if we're only given what we're looking at here, I think this the other.
You dropped off there. You think that?
I think that if we're only looking at what we see here, and that's the metric we're using for judging all the other ones today and comparing them, then I think this is the worst one.
Yeah.
Again, anything could change, but I think right now this is the easiest one to say that is low, even more than Sylvaneth. I know the Sylvaneth players are feeling a little roughed up, but I still think Sylvaneth's got more play than Slannesh.
Yeah, I agree. I've turned around on it a little bit, but we'll get to that in a minute. So Kruelboysz, I was not present for this, Ryan, but you were super hyped about them. I think they're amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the dirty trick rolls are interesting. I like the flexibility that they've got with kind of like trying their luck, pressing their luck. That feels very orky. The abilities are pretty neat. I think it's definitely them getting their own feel is a sort of meta buff that they got here, where they really are. I like that they're steering them in the direction of being their own thing. So that's good. Maybe if we also take a look at the war scrolls, because we've processed so many of these things at this point.
The reason why I'm saying that they're amazing is I think the dirty tricks are so good and so flexible, and so easy to execute at the start. I mean, and they're all good tricks as well. And then if you're looking at the war scrolls, Govsprak is fine. He has his upsides. But I love that the thing that's great about them is that they still have that crit mortal thing on almost every damaging war scroll.
Yeah.
And that's such a big thing in this new meta where you never see this. I mean, or hardly, at least.
Yep. As I mentioned in the thing, I'd like to see that the range gets expanded a little bit to have a little bit different types of units.
Yeah, a little bit more variety.
Yeah. But yeah, in general, I'm not down on these guys at all. I don't know if I would say they're one of the picks for being strong. I've heard rumors that maybe they're stronger than even they look here. We really have to wait and see how the shooting ends up working out, but because that's kind of been one of the big ways they play.
Yeah.
But I'm positive on these guys for sure. I'd at least put them in good traits.
Yeah. I'm inclined to put them at good traits and scrolls, but I'm not sure whether you would agree with that.
Sure, we can go there for right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Soul Blights.
This is your army. Go for it.
Sure. So the only thing that I've gone down on a little bit now is the hunger. I was kind of hyped about the 2d3, but someone in the comments mentioned, like, for the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, for example, it would usually heal the damage that it dealt up to 6. So, and that actually happened quite often. So in that regard, it's a little bit of a nerf. That being said, the army still plays very much the same way. You've got the recursion, you've got Deathly Invocation. There's probably gonna be ways to duplicate the Deathly Invocation. You still got the summoning from the grave. It's just not in grave sites now, but terrain. And I've really come around on embracing the terrain instead of the grave sites. I was already a big fan of it, but as you kind of convinced me of in our review, I saw it as a side grade back then, and now I see it as an upgrade.
Yeah, I do in general.
Yeah.
And I think it just streamlines the game a bit more, and it really it gives you a lot of threat pieces on the table that your opponent has to babysit all of them instead of just 4. So I don't know. I mean, again, I think they had a real soft touch to nerfing these guys, all things considered, and they've got such great rule set. I think I'm still going to hate how strong the recursion mechanic can be. And I get what you're saying about the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, but that's your best example of a unit getting nerfed that way, and it's just one war scroll. And and then of course Vordry, but and
Radukar and Laukavai. I mean, all of the big things.
Sure, but I've never had a problem with this army with their big heroes. My reason that I hate playing this army is because of the hordes.
Yeah.
And they're still going to have a zombie sub-faction or a formation.
Which is the only thing that I'm not liking about this article.
And the Vargeisers, I still think taking one unit that can teleport like that is
you were really keen on these,
And I think the Blood Knights look good.
Yeah,
and especially consideration what else we've had. I think these guys are right up there with where OBR and Feck are sitting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's nothing jumps out at me as amazing, but it's all very solid and just it seems reliable.
Yes.
And that's the best that you can wish for, right?
I think it's still going to be a pain to play against. Yeah. So
before Skaven or behind?
I think before Skaven.
Okay.
There's a version where I think they're stronger than even Feck, but
really,
but it depends.
Yeah, keep in mind that we can only reinforce hordes once now. Maybe the zombie battle formation will allow double reinforcements. Yeah. Man, I hope that's not the case, but I can totally imagine it being that.
Sure.
Seraphon.
Oh boy, you were down on this one.
Yeah, I still am.
Okay. All right, go for it.
My opinion has only solidified towards the negative here. I think design-wise it's cool, but I do feel that they lost way too much to get here, and they almost didn't get anything in return. The Great Plan itself, I like it, and the abilities next to it I like as well. I have a problem with further Great Plan. It just doesn't fit with how the army should be played. And I do feel like this doesn't cover the identity of Seraphon for me. And I might not say that if I hadn't played Starborn and or Coalesced, but the fact that there's nothing akin to Starborn and Coalesced in here, I mean, you obviously got the small abilities that refer to that a little bit, but I don't know, I maybe wanted to see something more akin to what they were, but what I love about this is that I feel okay for bringing some Saurus into a magical dominant list, for example. I feel okay for bringing a Slan into a monster list, for example. So that mix and matching I really love for them. And their War Scrolls are still very, very strong. I just don't like the battle traits.
I mean, if I can push back a little bit about what you just said about losing the Starborn Coalesced. One is, like, I can very easily imagine that Kroak's War Scroll is going to basically be Starborn the War Scroll. And that he's bringing a lot of that stuff back. The Slan's War Scroll is good, so he's just going to be his own version of that, and I think that could very well be where that leans. But what you just said was we lost this kind of sub-faction-y, kind of mega-faction-y thing that used to make the army feel unique. Yeah, so did a lot of factions and cities. We still put cities in the top bracket there, or like the second bracket there, and they don't have any sign of the cities anymore, which used to be very much the literal name of the army.
Yeah.
And I think this set of rules being modular and choosable, if you had to choose it from the beginning of the game, I'd say this is pretty rough. But the fact that you can base it off of your opponent is so cool, I think.
Cool, yeah.
And because how many times have you, as like someone who's tried to play competitively, said, God, I'd really like to be able to use half of my command traits or artifacts, but they're all too situational. And the fact that you can choose something that used to be on, like, the kind of thing that would have been on your list writing on the basis of the mission and the player, I think is so good from a competitive consistency standpoint. I still think this army is going to be really strong. I just think it got kind of put back into where it's a little bit less of a eye roll or groan if you have to work against it. So,
and I think that's good. They deserve that because Starborn was terrible to play against. Yeah. I don't agree with the fact that that Kroak's gonna bring the whole Starborn kit, because Starborn was this marriage of all these specific elements that just came together to form a way too overpowering whole. As in, if you take away the bodyguard rule as it is in 3rd edition, for example, and you change it to a 5-up ward, the way that Starborn would be played is already dead. If you take away the teleports, it's partially dead. If you take away the reliable summoning, you can't control the field, you can't take objectives. If you take away the burst from those cosmic power points, it also loses a lot of damage potential. So I'm not completely sure on that statement, but I do agree with you that I'm probably a bit too harsh on the battle trades.
I mean, again, we don't need to like do the dissection of Seraphon again here, but the summoning is gone for almost everyone. It's just gone. And we do know there's a sub-faction for teleporting. I think Kroak might bring even a couple of those things, and then you're getting somewhere in the neighborhood, considering all the nerfs we've seen. Like, say what you want about Sylvaneth, but I think this is way stronger than what we've seen with Sylvaneth right now on paper. Still, everything we've seen about Seraphon, if you don't compare it, it's just in the vacuum of these indexes, I think it's still much stronger than what Sylvaneth's got going on. So
yeah, definitely agree. I would still put them in the good traits and scrolls. I just don't like the traits, but they're still fine.
Sure. I mean, I could even go down to good traits, I think, if that's where you wanted to be. But
yeah. Okay. Slaves. I'm still hyped about these guys. I've never been tempted as much by slaves as I am now, and I was already tempted by them a lot before.
Yep. I think these guys are good. I think they still have the fact that you can still do all the marks, but the marks really kind of almost feel like sub-factions in a way.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of lean into however you want. So a lot of that modularity is still there. The Eye of the Gods got expanded and is pretty neat.
And is also more, trustworthy, I suppose. It's almost as modular as the marks because you can re-roll it, and a lot of the effects kind of push you back towards an effect you want anyway.
Yep. I think the War Scrolls Bellicor looks fantastic. Yes. I think the Knights look good.
The Demon Prince also, right?
Yeah, got a lot better. I think this is top tier.
Yeah.
I think we can just call it a day on that one. I don't
Yes.
think much
Yes.
to argue about.
I would fully agree with that. I think I would put them at the front end here.
Yeah, I think they're. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I see. We're seeing all of my least favorite armies to play against top group. But yeah, just because they don't work for me. But I think they're strong in this game.
Yeah, strong in this game, strong in Soul Blights.
Hard to say. I think Soulblight's still going to be worse for me, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I think they're definitely still strong.
Sure. All right, Iron Jaws.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this. I've heard rumors that they're actually really strong. Obviously, the battle traits got nerfed or like kind of made kind of minimal, let's say. But I think a lot of the value is going to come from just all out attacking, like literally with lots of attack.
Yeah.
I'm
not impressed by the Wa, but I am still very much keen on Mighty Destroyers, even though you lost the slingshot aspect of it. I mean, this is just... We were raving about Murderlust for Khorne, and this is just that, but more often.
Yeah, yeah. And for free. Yeah. I think it's a bit of a wait and see. I like Big Pig. I like Gordrak just fine.
The Brutes are also phenomenal, right? I'm only down on the War Chanter, to be honest.
I'm okay with the switch. It's a side grade for me. I think the pigs, the regular pigs, are going to be great still. The what are they called? Gorgruntus, yeah. And then I like the Big Pig. Yeah. I'm curious to see what the other ones. I like, the Brutes are, that ability is real strong. Gosh, this is again our way of measuring things. I don't really like the battle traits all that much. I think they're kind of boring. So I'd put them at least in good scrolls for the literal definition of their scrolls are really good, I think.
Yeah.
But
it's either scrolls or good traits in scrolls, because sure, the Y is not amazing, but the moving thing is going to be so good.
I would at least put them at the top of good scrolls.
Yeah.
And then, because I think we're going to have to bring some of the things on the top, honestly, to balance this out. Because I think
top down.
Yeah, I think at the end we might have to reevaluate it.
Okay.
Like I'd probably pull Kruelboysz down a level.
Okay.
Let's talk about it in a minute.
Yeah. So 2 more to go. Sylvaneth. I've mellowed down or mellowed out a little bit on this. That being said, I don't really need to discuss about this quite a lot because it was a very recent discussion. But as we see it now, I could at best settle for good scrolls, but I would probably put them at meh, because the scrolls are fine, but without seeing the trees, I just cannot get behind any of the battle traits, and it's very hard to imagine how good the scrolls need to be without seeing the trees.
100%. I think meh is good for right now, a healthy meh, instead of like doom and glooming the whole thing, because I think we need to see way more of the army.
Yeah, it's just going to be a completely different play style. We were so used of the guerrilla tactic of hitting and then teleporting back, which in the end, I thought it was a cool way of playing, but I didn't really enjoy it as much. So maybe I might enjoy this way of playing even more. It just feels like I will often not be able to use my battle traits. That's the only thing I'm down on. But the scrolls looked sort of fine. At least the Everqueen and Durthu were pretty okay. They just lost a lot of good stuff as well, and that's the only thing that I'm a little bit down on.
Yeah, I think there's a wait and see, but let's put it in meh for. I mean, yeah,
definitely in front of Nurgle though. For scrolls,
I don't know. I think Nurgle's going to end up being more predictably good in the long run.
Nurgle's going to move to good traits and good scrolls. I'm 100% sure of that. But right now, as the faction focus stands,
sure. All right. Fine enough. Yeah.
If only, Ryan, because Sylvaneth's battle traits completely neutralize Nurgle's.
Yeah.
Because they heal off the disease every turn.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
That's the only reason, maybe.
Or not mirror match, but in the matchup,
Yeah. Okay, so on to the coordinates then. I know where I want to put these.
My only problem is how easy is it going to be to generate blood tithe, because you used to from what's it called, spell ignoring things.
Yeah.
So it's the abilities are great if you can get enough blood types stored up, and then the war scrolls look solid. Like I think this is they came out. They're already strong right now. I think they're going to be continuing to be strong. So I'd put them in the top category.
Same. Completely agree. There's some war scrolls that kind of meh, like Karnak and the Blood Warriors, but I imagine especially the Blood Warriors are going to get way better from synergy. Karnak, I think, is going to be a lost cause, but that's okay for one scroll, especially after seeing that Boom Thirster, and I think the army still will do what it wants to do.
Yeah. Okay.
I might actually put these... I'll definitely put them before Lumineth, though, right?
Yeah, definitely. I put them before Stormcast.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Then before Skaven?
I
imagine Skaven would deal with Khorne.
I think Skaven's going to secretly be one of the biggest...
The biggest what?
Shooting threats.
Yeah, that's why I imagine they'll deal with Khorne, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as that kind of like rock, paper, scissors, they're going to be pretty good. But
okay, sure. So the beasts obviously are not in the picture, so we're going to leave them there at the bottom, outside of the AOS4 spectrum. So you mentioned you wanted to move things around. Let's maybe work our way up from the bottom, because I think that might be interesting. I feel like at the bottom we're kind of more solidified on our position for those armies.
Yes.
So the Slannesh tier, I think, is fitting. Slannesh and poor Ogors. The meth tier is weird that it sits there, because neither of us thinks that's going to mean that it's going to be a bad army. It's just a weird faction focus.
Yeah.
Good scrolls. I
can see... Yeah.
I think Gitz belong there, to be honest.
Okay, I was about to say maybe we pull them down, but I could get on board with that.
Yeah. I was mostly mentioning of not pulling him up.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think if we just look at it in the vacuum of the index, I think it might be a wait and see. So because we don't know
what
enough.
You're saying. If you compare the tools, I just don't really see how they're gonna match up against any of the bigger threats here, and it's like half of the books are just straight out, half of the faction focuses were straight up better than theirs.
Yeah, so I could see pulling Gitz down a level.
Sure, yeah, I'll agree to that, yeah.
Maybe above the other two.
Sure.
Because I think they're more predictably going to fill in those gaps.
They still have a lot of tools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Iron Jaws, I feel like he's fair there.
Yeah, just by definition of like the battle traits are kind of like they're neither here nor there.
But then that's the same for daughters, right? Because you made a really good point about you need your army to be alive for the battle traits to still be effective.
Yeah.
And I still feel the same about Gargans. The rampages are okay, but I don't know whether it's enough to let you play the game.
Yeah. I mean, again, our tier list here is a weird one, but it's partially due to
all tier lists are obviously super limited to...
Yeah, but it's not linear is what I mean, is like there's certain parts of these armies that I would pull down and certain parts I'd keep where they are.
Yeah. This could be a Venn diagram.
Yeah, that'd be... Or I was thinking before we started, but I didn't suggest it, that maybe doing a matrix where they're like on a continuous spectrum in corners. But I think I'm the only category that I really think I want to move around a little bit is the top one.
Okay, let's do it.
So I definitely want to pull Kruelboysz down to good traits, down a tier. I think it's good, but I don't know if we have enough information to say where exactly they sit. The fact that they're all doing mortals is nice. I maybe put them above KO. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're thinking, but that's kind of maybe where
I'm a little bit in doubt about the Ironeth. I don't feel like they're behind cities.
Well, I mean, in terms of battle traits, I think cities has a lot of flexibility, but then it's only as good as their war scrolls. Whereas Ironeth's battle traits, I think we have every reason to think their war scrolls will end up catching up. With striking first and the high tide and everything. So I mean, I could see that getting switched around.
Okay. Let's do it.
But I still think Destiny dice are too strong to move them lower.
Agree.
KO's movement shenanigans are fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't know about their output.
Yeah.
Whereas Kruelboysz and Fyreslayers, if they can get up there, I think they're going to be able to deliver. In fact, maybe in that sense, Kruelboysz higher than Fyreslayers, just because
Yeah.
Fyreslayers aren't guaranteed delivery mechanism.
I would agree.
Then, there's a part of me that thinks Stormcast could be brought down, because I'm just looking at all these death armies and slaves and thinking, what am I going to do against these armies? And even Khorne. Whereas like Lumineth, I feel like if we had another tier, I would kind of draw that line. I'd probably put Khorne higher than Skaven. I don't know. At least the top 4 armies to me would be in like a S tier. Those first 4 that we have there.
Yeah.
I just think
Skaven as well. I would say
Skaven's going to have its matchups that are going to be rough for it, especially if you can turn off the holes, the null holes.
Yeah.
So, and Stormcast is so reliant on its war scrolls that we don't know. Nighthaunt I could also see coming down a little bit on the list. Oh, is that me again?
Yep.
I thought
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. But I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I feel fine about it as it is now. Maybe swap around the order of the green ones, but I wouldn't necessarily bring one down. I understand what you're saying about Stormcast, as in their war scrolls looked okay, but I was especially drawn by their heroes and the shield guys, but I can't imagine the other stuff carrying enough of that weight to fight against those death armies here. But as it stands now, what we've seen from the faction focuses, I think we're at a good place.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Right. Would you be fine with this?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is gonna shuffle a lot once we get the faction packs. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, so I guess that brings it us at the end of the video, Ryan.
I had a great time.
Yeah. Do you want to take us out here?
Sure. I mean, guys, let's not start a fire down in the comments below, because again, we don't know where all this stuff is going to get filled in. But let us know what you thought of this. If you got strong opinions about your top picks or your bottom picks, maybe the faction that you think should be the most radically different than what we put here. We're definitely curious to see that. We're going to know soon enough what all the rules really are. And then obviously we're going to get to start playing some games soon, which I can't be more excited about. So really looking forward to that. Thank you for following us for this whole journey. Jonas wrote a really nice message in the Blades of Khorne faction focus about the whole experience, not only with you guys, but also with me. And I want to just say this channel wouldn't even exist if it weren't for Jonas. So everyone give your love to Jonas out there. And let's just, keep the positive vibes going into the beginning of what looks to be a really interesting, if nothing else, edition. So
I'm so excited, Ryan.
Yeah. So Jonas, I don't know if you, but otherwise we can just wrap it up.
Yeah, the only thing I would want to suggest, guys, is if you just copy our tiers here, so you got the 5 tiers here, just write in the comments one army that you feel like fits perfectly in that tier for you, right? So one army that you would say has really good traits and really good scrolls, one army that really specifically has good traits, and so on and so on. I really want to see what you guys make of this. I'm curious to see that, and otherwise you can also chat with us about this video or other stuff in our Discord, and subscribe so you will stay in touch and you will pick up Ryan's video, because he's working on something pretty interesting as well. So yeah, guys, I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.